The weather is not promising for today, and although I do have a garage, it has no power, which means no lights. And I also have my '85 Subaru Brat sitting in there. So I'm going to try to do this here in the driveway. So here's my 1994 Subaru Legacy L, and its radiator has sprung a leak, so it's time to replace the radiator. I've got my tools, brand new radiator in the box, new hoses, and here's the bad radiator. I've already put a pan down underneath there, and you can see that it's working. It's collecting the stuff that's already leaking out. So we're going to go ahead and pull the drain plug and hopefully get this thing back on the road today, provided that the rain doesn't stop us. First I'm going to take off the overflow tank. That's a 10mm socket. There we go, got that out. I'll just slide that out there and lift the tank out. You can see it's still got plenty of coolant in it. So I haven't been running it since it's got the crack in the radiator. So we'll set this upright and out of the way. Underneath, we've got a couple fan wiring harnesses we need to unplug. We've got one right here and one on the other side over there. So I got to get those off before I can unscrew the fan. I got the fans unplugged. So now I've got to undo these bolts here and similar ones on the bottom. I'm going to do this before I lift the radiator out, just so I've got a little bit of extra room to work around down in there. These are also 10mm bolts. Yep, that's why we've got those magnetic tools. Unfortunately, that one fell all the way through. Got it here. Here's the disconnected fan wires. Put this up out of the way for now. You can see the bolts here that are holding on the fans from below. So we'll just get to these. I gotta make sure this thing doesn't fall on my head. That'll be the opposite of what I want today. One's out. Put that over there. One left. Just sitting on top of that bolt too, so that's nice. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And the fan is out. Repeat the procedure with the other one. It's starting to rain a little bit harder here, so we may have to call it for a little bit here. And that's okay. It's the weekend. As long as I get this done before Monday, we'll be in good shape. Fun land. I think that when I put the new radiator in, I'll mount the bottom bolts. I'm going to slide in from the top, and then I'll tighten these up. Try to get the top mounted in. Because the bottom of the fan mount is a slot as opposed to a hole. Like that, it's loose. So we'll pull that out, and then I'm going to close up for a minute until the rain slows down. It's slowed down a little bit on the rain, so I'm going to take out these top holding bolts on the radiator. Will just be sitting there, and then I'll drain the coolant system. These are 12mm bolts that are holding this in. loosened up a little bit. Comes out just fine. Cut myself somehow, so always wear gloves. For me, when gloves don't fit tiny hands. Alright, so these top radiator mounts have been safely removed. We'll put them over in the pile. We got both of our bolts. Clean them up before we put them back in. At this point, we're ready to drain the coolant system, and then we'll be able to install the new radiator. One thing you might notice about this drain cock here is that it lacks a little hose that'll take all of the coolant that's still remaining in the radiator, mainly water at this point, and shunt it out over this lip. So what we're going to have to do is make sure our pan is down there in a place that'll catch it no matter where it's running off. And I think I've got it relatively well positioned. So I'm going to get the electrical bit, our plug, up out of the way. See how it's dangling down there? We don't want it to just be covered by water and everything. That's not going to be great for it. Get up out of the way there. And try to open it by hand. If it doesn't open by hand, which doesn't appear to be, I'll have to get some grips on there. Alright, now we got it rolling. It's coming out like you can see there. It's all going into the pan, which is what we want. To facilitate it coming out, I have this aftermarket coolant fill and bleed valve up here. So I've uncapped that so that it's not just burping it up. It'll drain smoothly. So I'm going to let this drain for a while until it's all empty. And I'm going to come back to it. Okay, so we've got, looks like most of the coolant drained out. So there's not a whole lot in the bucket there, or in the pan. Probably because we had a leak in the radiator. So what I'm going to do now is detach these hoses. We've got the upper and the lower radiator hoses, and I've got brand new ones right here. So I'm going to pull these off so that we can lift out the radiator. Just takes either a Phillips head screwdriver, or if they're tight, stuck, or you just don't want to deal with a screwdriver, you can use a 10mm socket on this. Loose enough that we can back it out by hand now. Slide that off. Oh yeah. Perfect. Pull off the other end here. Might need an extension. Yeah, it looks like I'll need an extender to get around some of this extra hose that's in there that goes to the power steering pump. Okay, now I've got an extension on here. So I should be able to get this off relatively quickly. Oh yeah, much better. Keep using this just because it's still a little bit tight on there. It's coming off real easy with it though. Oh yeah, definitely nice and loose now. I should be able to work that off of the engine itself. Beautiful. Turn anything out of there, which there isn't a whole lot of. And this will be our replacement, this S-shaped critter. I'm going to move our container to this side so that if there's still coolant left in the hose or in the lower end of the radiator, the bottom end of the engine, we'll be able to capture any of that that comes out on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And that looks like a good placement for that. Alright, so we're going to go in and do the same thing on this side. We're going to remove the hose clamp. This one might be a little bit long to use that. I'm hitting the timing belt cover. No, that's much better. Real easy there. Nice and loose. Put this down here so we don't forget it and lose it. Work that hose off. And as I suspected, there's a little bit of coolant left in there, but we moved it over just in time. Got a bolt to lock that in there. Radiator looking pretty loose. I'm going to pull this hose that goes into our overflow tank off. A little bit of fluid in there. We'll reuse that. And we should be able to lift our radiator out. Get the last little bit of fluid out. All right. I think we're ready to start the reassembly process. Okay, so here we've got our old radiator. And look on the back side here. And we can see that down here, this is upside down, this is where all that leakage was coming from, is over in this corner. Our new radiator looks shiny and pretty. And we can see on the back side, it's got these all stubbed off nicely. This is for the automatic transmission, which this vehicle does not have. So what these are going to be doing is nothing. We're going to leave these caps on there. That's where transmission fluid would circulate through the radiator. But since we don't have an automatic transmission and we're using gear oil instead of transmission fluid for our transmission lubrication, we aren't going to worry about those. Stripped threads will void warranty, which is encouraging that they've got a warranty since they printed this backwards. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and lower this into place at first. Slide it on down in there. We gotta take a little bit of caution since we've got those automatic transmission points. There we go. I knew we could do it. Alright, and it sits right in there. Everything lines up, nothing's interfering with anything. Okay, so things are fitting in here pretty well. I've gone ahead and inserted the bolts for our fans, so we can just slide that down on top of those once I get the hoses attached. So that'll be the next thing I do here, is attach the upper and the lower coolant hoses. Got the hose slipped on, so now it's just time to tighten up our hose clamps. You can see the radiator itself is still not firmly mounted, and that's okay. Kind of don't want it to be right now. I'll be able to have a little bit of flexibility so I can get that lower water hose on. There we go, now I can start ratcheting. So nice and tight. Make sure we don't have any leakage on it. It's not slipping, get a good bite in there. There we go. Yeah, that's not moving, so let's move on to the lower. Alright, we've got our lower water hose here. You may remember how difficult it was to get to one of those hose clamps last time, so I've actually gone ahead and reversed the direction on that, so that if I need to do this again in the future, this is now facing out towards the front of the car. On that side. Okay, off camera, I went ahead and tightened up those two hose clamps, making sure that they were snug on there. I also put these bushings in. These are the bushings from the old radiator. I took them out of there real quick since the new one didn't come with them. And these radiator mounts will slide right in like that to keep the radiator from jostling around. Those will be installed kind of as the last step here. But now we've got all of our hoses hooked up, our upper hose, our lower hose. So it's time to slide in the fans. 2 fans, and they do have a side to them. We've got our driver side and we've got our passenger side fan. And you can tell the difference because the driver side has the mount for the coolant overflow tank. So we'll just start off on this side here. Get the wires out of the way. I'll make sure we don't damage any of the fins on the way down. Slid down in there, sitting on the bolts. We'll do the same for driver's side. Making sure our holes line up. Perfect. Take our bolts again, the ones we just pulled up before. Hand tighten all of them in here first, just so we can hold them up easily. And we'll get underneath, tighten those up. And then come back up here to snug these. All right, we're down underneath here. We've got our first bolt attached. We're going to go ahead and tighten it up. Down here, I'm going to reattach those fan plugs too. We're just done underneath here. We're just done. That's in. Snap this sucker back into place. Solid. Do the same over here. Come here, buddy. Solid length there. Make sure that cable wire is tucked in to that so it doesn't get drawn into the fan. Still has to be snugged in. If you want to click. Okay, now we'll just snug these up. These ones we started before. Our fans are nice and tight up on the radiator. Fairly good, and then we'll come back in and reel nice and tight. Tight, 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 and tight. All right. Fans are secured and plugged in. Okay, for our next step and our last step in the actual install, we got to switch back over to the 14 millimeter, or I'm sorry, 12 millimeter, to put on our mounts here. We slide the metal prong into the bushing. Take our bolts, put them back in. That'll hold our radiator nice and secure. while we're driving down the road. Be ashamed to have it get damaged after we spent so much time and effort replacing it. There. It's got a little bit of movement, but it's going to be held in place by these bushings and by the post, so that's exactly what we want, just a little bit. Last but not least on this side is our coolant tank. Like I said, this is important that we get the right fan on the right side because it has the mount for that. Just slides right in. And this will take that 12mm socket. Just tighten that up. Hold it in place. This tube comes out of the top of the radiator. We'll slide it back in here into our overflow tank. We'll slide it onto our new radiator and use this pinch clamp to get on there tight. Let's see, I might need to grab just to open that up wide enough, but that's okay. There, secure. Okay, we have the coolant system topped off. Both the radiator plug and our burp valve in the back had fluid in them almost to the coming out point, so I think we're ready to start it up and test the system. A little bit of coolant down there, but that's from my fill up. Can you see any leakage at any of the hose clamps? So it's looking good. I'll turn on the heater, try to get a little bit more going with the system. And if all seems functional, it's time to crack a beer because we're done. Temperature is coming up normally with heater on full blast. Still no leaks. All seems right.